Hello, everyone. How is it going? It is Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and that means that I've got a buddy. I've got a buddy with me, and today the buddy's name is Wes. You may know him as Arcane Anthems, creator of incredible music inspired by TTRPG scenarios and all sorts of other stuff. Wes, thank you so very much for being here. Get this on the calendar right now. Get this on the calendar. Let's talk about world stuff. Oh, well, unfortunately, Wes is muted apparently. Hold on. Oh, I know why. I got you. 1 second. I'm a professional streamer. Okay, now you should be able to talk.
I mean, technical issues mean that you're a professional streamer.
I'm a professional streamist.
That's what that means.
I streamed really great at everybody today.
Streamify.
Yes. All right.
Streamitter. There it is.
We did it.
We did it, folks.
We did it, chat. We got we got the thing that was supposed to be working to work. So we're gonna run it back. We're gonna loop back. All right. Thank you for being here, Wes. How is it going?
Hey, I'm the buddy. I think is what the first thing that I said. It's going great. It's going really well. I'm just prepping for Gen Con, making stuff happen, hopefully happen. And there's just a lot to do at this convention. So there's me trying to do the aforementioned a lot. And just between like panels and between housing and events and invites and coordinating with people to like get to actually see people, because there's like 300 of my closest friends at Gen Con every year. So like trying to like make that time and make those things happen is so tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do a lot of planning beforehand.
I've already gone back and forth on how long I want to be there, what I want to try to accomplish, what panels I want to go to, what panels I want to be on. I also submitted a panel that they said, hey, we want this panel, but we can't fit it on the time slot that you asked for. So resubmit it for this other time slot because we want to put it there. And I was like, actually, I'm going to use this opportunity to not do that because I don't think I can handle running a panel right now because I'm very deeply overwhelmed by all the other things that I'm trying to be ready for Gen Con. So it's a lot to get ready for.
It's a ton. It's so much. And every year it's so much. And I feel like the first year I went, I didn't really know what to expect. I went because I was kind of invited to go by Dice Cream Sandwich, Kevin, and I like didn't understand the convention at all, and now I like get it. Like now I or at least I thought I did, but they keep changing stuff on me still. So it's just such a massive convention, and there's just so many things to do and to try and do. That it can become very overwhelming if you aren't very conscious and deliberate about your goals going into the con, which I'm really that has helped me. I usually split up my conventions into main quests and then side quests, and I have
That's
like
such a good idea.
As, like things that like I have to get done, and then I have side quests like things that'll pop up or like emails that I'll get that I want to interact with, or people that I want to see go in my side quest list, and then I can like check those off. So I always have something to do if I want to, but I then have the option to just jump back into my main quests and really prioritize those things and get those done. Highly recommend living your life that way. It means a lot less problematic stuff.
Oh man, that's such a good categorization. That fits just so perfectly in the old noggin. I'm gonna be able to actually think about things that way. Because when I went to East, it was just like I am both overwhelmed and underwhelmed. Like I have too many things that I want to do, and I don't know what I want to do, and I don't think that I need to do anything. And so I spent many hours in the large soaking tub in my hotel room instead of going to the convention.
Because it can be so much brain power, that idea of figuring out things to do and trying to coordinate with people. And at conventions, I find myself with a lot of hurry up and wait time. Where like I have 30 minutes or I have 45 minutes somewhere, but you have like those 45 minutes like 8 times throughout the day, and that time adds up if you have nothing to do with it. So
now I'm standing here in a big busy hallway, not knowing what to do for the next hour
with a billion things to do. It's like standing in the cereal aisle, right? you're just like, how do I negotiate like what I want to eat? And that's kind of how these panels are, or how these conventions go. Hi, Dice Goblin Black Cat. Good to see you again.
It's like a
so excited to have
cereal aisle of dice, basically.
Yeah, there's just so much. There's just so much. And if you aren't prepared before you go, or like I tend to prepare on the plane, I'll like make all that stuff. It's like 9 hours to kill when I'm flying there. So I'll be writing up all my different like panelist moderator questions, and that way I got plenty to do when I'm just 30,000 feet in the air. But yeah, Gen Con's a hoot. It's just pricey. It's just expensive.
Right around the corner, August, first week of August, August 1st through 6th. Something like that. 5th?
It's usually 4 days, so the 5th. Yeah, 5th is when it ends on Sunday.
Math.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Well,
like
world building.
On the 5th, something like that. World building.
Building. The building of worlds. The world of building. We're gonna look at both directions today, both building worlds and worlds of buildings.
Hey, wow. Okay.
I mean, hopefully your world has buildings in it.
Class.
This is an architecture. So I brought Wes on here specifically for his well-known architectural chops.
Yes.
When I think of architecture expert, first man that comes to mind,
Arcane Anthems.
Right here.
Yes. I actually wanted to be an architect as a kid. That was like the thing that I would say.
Oh, really?
People asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah, I was an architect. Because at the time I was like super into Legos, but little did I know that I was really just using Legos as a way to build worlds. I like created an economy system inside of my little Lego world with like the different little crystals that I would use.
Oh yeah.
And they would have to go like mine these things to like get cash out and then sell them off and trade them for different parts, and like that was me playing by myself in my room.
I love that.
Making charts and an economy. So yeah, world building. I've been doing that since I was 7.
Yup.
I didn't know I was doing it. I was just doing it for fun, I guess. Making spreadsheets, which is awesome.
I legitimately did once. I think I was on like a vacation with my family, and the only entertainment that I had was like access to my father's laptop that had like Microsoft Excel on it, and I used a spreadsheet to make some form of like world game kind of thing. I just like made up a bunch of rules in my head, didn't know how to use Excel besides putting numbers in, but just like manually did a whole bunch of like, this is a town that has these people and these resources, and this other town has these resources. And that's the best that I could do with what I had. I'm a survivor. What can I say?
That's great. That's so good.
But that actually... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that drives home a point that like, it made a lot of sense that when I started playing tabletop games that I started off as the game master, to no one's surprise, that is where my beginnings were, which is really fun.
Hello, Seth. Welcome on in. Thank you for popping over. So Wes, the discussion of sort of our origins is a great segue into the first question that I had actually pre-prepped for you, which is what came first, the music or the TTRPGs? And it sounds like oh, really?
Absolutely. I've been heavy into music since I was 5, and like we have like tape recordings of me like singing as a kid. My entire family is musical, so they all sing, but they don't treat it. Most of them don't treat it like a career. Most of them treat it like breathing. You know, like that was what it was. The church to music pipeline is strong. And I just grew up singing. I grew up in choirs. I grew up at 16. I picked up a guitar, and that was definitely the trajectory for my life. And tabletop games happened because I fell out of love with music, and I felt kind of like a very jaded, having struggled as a musician for like a decade, and never really felt like I got very far. So I kind of stopped doing that. I started working kind of a retail job for a massive, conglomerate tech company. And then my friend decided to like get into like board gaming, right?
Yeah.
So we started playing like Pandemic and Small World and
Small World's so good.
Dead of Winter, and we started playing all these games. They're an absolute blast. It's back in 2015. So I kind of got into tabletop games via all of the board gaming, which I had loved my entire life. I had always loved board games. So I started doing a lot of board games, and then around the same time, I very, very randomly on Imager happened to cross a post about what eventually became Critical Role on like episode. They're on like, when I started watching, they're on episode 22 or 23.
Oh my god!
I mean, it was like
Imagine like
new.
discovering Critical Role.
Yeah, well, it was still on Geek and Sundry at the time. There was still all the original Critical Role cast on there, and they didn't really know what they were doing either. It was really wild to see that. I almost didn't click the link because I was like, this is too nerdy. But I was really into voice acting. Like that was like something I was super interested in. So I was like, oh, all of them are voice actors. Maybe I might learn a thing or two from them. And then I fell deeply in love with D&D, and then I tricked my entire gaming board group into playing with me. Because when I first mentioned it, they were like, no, that doesn't seem like very much fun. Like, what are you talking about?
That's too many clacky numbers.
Yeah, it's too tricky. And then I reeled them in, right, with Mice and Mystics, and I kind of painted all the different minis. It's an RPG in a box, and man, that was a good time. So I kind of GM'd this game that didn't necessarily have a GM, and I had them all play characters, and they kind of got into this idea of like wargaming a little bit with like RPG, where your character levels up and finds new spells and like gets items, and like it helps them along their journey. And then halfway through that campaign, they were like, okay, we get it, we see what you're doing, we see what you've done, let's play some D&D.
Hell yeah.
Let's make characters, let's do all that stuff. And I had no idea how to do
Oops, now I gotta be responsible for this party.
Yeah, let me buy all the books. Let me, and they all came over for like 4 hours one day, and we just tried to figure out like how to build a character. This was before D&D Beyond. This was before it was easy. This was back when it took hours to build a character, right? And some of them made their character all wrong, which we found out about a year and a half later.
Yep.
Not to their detriment, mind you. To my as a GM's detriment, they were like, my stats were way too high.
Yeah.
I was like, oh great, that's why you've been just absolutely destroying me this entire time.
Yeah, my first D&D character, I'm pretty sure had like, at level 1 had like the lowest modifier was like a +2, and that wasn't because I followed the rules. It was because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, this seems accurate. I've got a bunch of pluses, sure.
It's like, yeah, like why would I have a negative on anything? But it ended up being a 6-year-long campaign, and we finished it in 2021.
Oh wow!
So very, very cool. Just such a great time, and I just jumped in and made a lot of mistakes, and but I got good at it. I kind of started off pretty good at it because I kind of see the way that Mercer DM'd, and like I copied some of the things that, like I was a theater kid, so like acting and like being big like that and being playful is the most important thing you can do in D&D, right? Like being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to learn to play again. And that's what I told my players, was like, hey, like it's gonna feel a little weird at first. It's gonna feel a little bit juvenile at first because we as adults forget how to play. And relearning how to play makes you a better person. I mean, it reawakens. It makes you a more well-rounded. It reawakens a really important social behaviors, and it's just a really fulfilling experience when you relearn how to, or when you start playing again as an adult.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The weirdest part of getting started with any TTRPG, I think, from like going from like zero to playing a TTRPG is getting past that sense of like, I'm being weird though, but I'm being weird. And it's like, yeah, be weird. That's the whole point. That's the fun part. And the more weird you are and the more that you lean into the weird, the better it gets. So like, go hard, you know? Getting into the point where I could like get into character, or then like go beyond that and be a DM and get into every character at once. Yeah, learning to let loose and learning to just like do all that stuff and embrace the creativity of all these people that we're friends with. Like reaching out and bringing in people that you've always like resonated with, and then being like, hey, let's like share a fantasy, like let's share a world in our heads and just play. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Whole new side of people. These
kind of games will connect you faster with strangers than really anything else will. I mean, and again, it has to do with that element that like play has been a part of our literal DNA and our evolutionary heritage for hundreds of thousands of years. That is like, we are social animals. Mm-hmm. And this is a very like high level way that we build those communities. So what an awesome thing to be able to play as adults, and to create and to build and to make memories that become just as powerful as, you know, our 9-to-5s or you know, whatever our normal memories are. These things become real to us in the same way, but way more fantastical.
Hopefully more fantastical than your 9-to-5, or rather, hopefully your 9-to-5 is as fantastical. That's the real. That'd be amazing. I would love to start talking a bit about the building, the what we take and what we put into making these spaces fun to play in. And I want to start with like obviously your specialty, which is drawing inspiration from these incredible scenarios that we've cooked up and making something new from that inspiration. I was thinking about this earlier today, about how a lot of your videos will be a clip from an actual play followed by a song inspired by that clip. And contrasting that, I've previously talked with my friend Gina. Oh, hey, it's Gina. Wonderful. Yeah, and when we were chatting about creating characters, she was talking about how important of a role music plays in creating her characters. So it's a music in, music out scenario that we have here. We've got music being an inspiration. And I know that she's not alone in music being an inspiration for characters, settings, scenarios. So music coming in, being an inspiration for people to create these scenarios that then generate inspiration to create more art. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, art builds on itself, mm-hmm. right? So like the more art that's in the world, the more art there will be in the world. And I mean, that's one of the dangers of this like generative AI revolution, right? That we're currently seeing, is that AI doesn't actually create art. It is just pulling from things that already exist. And it's not doing much interpretation. So it self-cannibalizes very quickly.
Yeah.
And it can devolve into this like, you know, to these ones and zeros that really end up not making a lot of sense. So that's why human creation is so important, is that we make things, and when we are reinterpreting these artistic ideas through a person, it's on the other side, it still ends up making sense. Whereas when you are trying to do it generatively, it might look good for a little bit, but if that human input stops, it's over. It ends very quickly, and again, it self-cannibalizes. So like this idea that art breeds art is so true and so powerful that, I mean, that's one of my favorite reasons. That's one of the reasons I make music, right? I started making music because I felt unheard and I felt misunderstood. So me making music is a way that I communicate who I am to the world, more quickly than I used to be able to do with words. And now I feel like I've gotten a lot better at that. You know, I've gotten better at the speaking and being vulnerable. I see vulnerability as a strength, not as this thing to be avoided at all costs. So because of that, now music makes me feel emotions. It makes me feel things deeper than I would if I was reading something or watching something. In fact, in many movies, it's really the music that is triggering those emotions, right? Music has a huge pull. And I was speaking to somebody about this a couple days ago, another musician in the TTRPG space, and we were talking about how it's just frequencies, right? It's just a bunch of like frequency waveforms. That's all music is. And yet it makes us feel things like that.
That's
is
wild.
Magic.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
that is
literal magic.
actual magic. Music is magic. You don't see it. I mean, you can see people playing instruments per se, but you don't see the sound, right?
Yeah.
And yet it is like affecting you in a way that is so visceral that like you can like start crying, or you can, you know, get up and like like it causes you to move, or it causes a crowd to like stomp their feet. Like, it's wild, the impact and the power that music has on people.
And it's just pressure waves. Like it's just
it.
Invisible pressure waves wafting through the air,
moving at different speeds. That's all it is.
And now my heart is sad.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's actual magic. And I, like, for me, like, one of my favorite things to do is to take songs and turn them into one shots.
Ooh.
So like you'll sit down, and I've been meaning to do this series for so long, but like you hop into the Beatles, like Yellow Submarine, and you make a one shot, or Octopus Garden, or, you know, like there's a billion songs that you can just like pull through the Fire and Flames, and turn it into a one shot for your players. So like for me, music is all of that. Music is storytelling. Music is emotion. Music is how I communicate in a lot of ways. So it's very natural to me to look at somebody's gameplay or like a sick line from someone and then reinterpret that line in the way that feels most natural to me.
I'm curious to know if you align with the taking music as the starting point before, like you just said, you know, using songs to create one shots. Are you, when you're making a character, or when you're making, let's say, like a given town or location that you're going to be playing as a setting, are you pulling from music to get there? Is music inherent to your creative process? Or is it wholly separate in your mind? The creative separation between the world building and coming up with the fantasy itself and the music. I'm saying I ask because I find that I will vibe with a song, get all sorts of inspiration, and then have to separately recall that inspiration and convert it into something that works. It's like a multi-step process for me, but I'm also not a literal musician.
It's always different for me. I definitely wouldn't say that I have to have music in order to be inspired. In fact, I'm inspired by all sorts of things. Like I said, like most of these like live play lines that I'm pulling from aren't accompanied by music. They're just something that somebody said that I'm like, oh, that I could turn that into something because I understand the feelings that it gives me, and then I can identify those feelings as, oh, it gives me longing. Okay, it makes me feel warm. And it makes me feel connected. Then I'll take those words and I'll turn that into music. Because interpreting feelings and creating song out of them is something that I have worked. I've done literally hundreds of times. And that's how I do all my commissions. That's how I do everything else. So like being able to pull the specific adjectives from somebody's statement, I can turn those feelings, those adjectives into the song. And then all I have to do is ask myself, like, oh, does this song feel that way? Yeah, okay, great, I did it.
I've done it. I made it happen.
The goals are very clear. Like it's very straightforward. You don't have to pretend. You just say like, oh, did I hit these points? Yeah, okay, great, done. And there's 1,000 ways to do that, right? With 1,000 different instruments. But I just accept that whatever it is that I'm listening to at the time is the music I'm gonna be making. So like, I've been listening to tons of this artist on TikTok called RJ Payson. He does a lot of like guitar tapping, like fast riff kind of stuff. It sounds very anime, very like people use it for like Elden Ring edits.
Oh, good.
So like I've been listening to a ton of him. So then I was like, yeah, like this is like, yeah, I'm going to take that inspiration and I'm going to create it. I'm going to take that style of play and then I'm going to interpret it in my own way, and then it's going to create a song about a tabletop game. Like that's just what it is, and I don't question it. I don't think like, oh, am I just pulling from this person or copying? Like no, like I don't think most people realize how difficult and how much of a talent it is to copy somebody perfectly. Like, do you know how hard that is a skill? You think about like actors who are just really good impressionists, right? That's not easy. That's not like an easy thing to do. Making exact copies of things. So like, yeah, if you can perfectly copy something, fantastic. You've got a talent that most people don't have. And I'm not that good. So I know that whatever it is that I'm making is going to be different, is going to be unique. And I don't worry so much about what it sounds like coming out the other end. I just believe, and I've done it enough times to know that once I make it through all these pieces, that it will sound hopefully like a song, and really it's just a matter of believing that that song exists on the other end, because there's a lot of points where it doesn't sound very good, and you just have to know that it will.
I feel that all too strongly with not necessarily music, but most of my creative endeavors of like, this is an absolute disaster. How is this ever? Oh, it worked. Okay, cool. Like that's pretty much how the vast majority of my everything goes. But I think that's just part of the fun and part of getting there is that process. But
that's what creation is, right? You think about like the beginning of every campaign is always going to feel a little bit like rough and rocky as people are figuring it out. They're like sketching out these characters. They're sketching out this world. It's all coming together, and then in 2 or 3 sessions, you're like really rolling. And so I feel like with any creative endeavor, you have to do it from start to finish enough to believe that the finish is going to be worth all the work you put in the middle. And that to me is what hope is, right? Hope is believing from the beginning before it's happened, and through the hard pieces. So if you are somebody who is hopeful, then that is what that looks like, is that you're able to get through the tough things to make the final product.
Welcome to World Building Wednesdays. We're talking to you about how to find hope in the darkest of times.
Honestly.
Actually, yeah, kind of. Unironically.
1,000% yes. Like in all seriousness, I feel like people, one, I think that people's priorities are wrong. There is value in creation. There is value in just the process of it. And even if it's not monetary, if all we did was live for monetary value, we would have a very hollow life. So like when I pick up a new hobby, right now I'm learning to draw. That's like the newest thing that I've been trying. Because I've always felt very confused by visual art. It's never made any sense to me. And I through this career of being a content creator, I've learned a lot of like graphic design, tons and tons of graphic design stuff. Um, it just kind of innately, but I wanted to learn art in a way that was very structured. So that's what kind of what I'm doing now, and it's been a lot of fun to like start off with this image that's like so bad, and then like you start moving things around, you start adjusting like the size of the eyes and the eyebrows, and like moving moving the face and stretching it out a little bit, and then you're like, oh, this is looking like a person.
Oh my god, it's a person's happening.
This is not Frankenstein's monster anymore. This is looking like a person. Kind of it's a very cool process. Also, the other thing I always bring up whenever we're talking about creativity is like, don't worry about what the finished product looks like. You know, like
Very
when you're
fair.
creating things, the biggest mistake that people make, in my opinion, that really good creative people make, is that they spend too much time on the finishing piece. They get 80% of the way there, and then they spend 3, 4, 5, 6 times the amount of time on that last 10, 20%, right? Like, just accept that like your 80% now is going to be very different from your 80% in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But you'll get to that 3 or 4 or 5 years point a lot faster if you just call things done and move on to the next thing. You're going to grow so much quicker than if you spent all the time in the weeds trying to get that stuff perfectly right. No, get it good, and then move on, move forward to the next thing. Let that be a part of your artistic journey.
A piece of advice from the world of programming, my previous world, which I actually, one of the few pieces of advice that I still hold on to, and I think applies to most things, is first make it work, then make it good. There's a third part that doesn't actually apply to most things besides software, which is then make it fast. But first make it work, then make it good. Like if you're trying to go straight from nothing to good, it's just not happening. It's just not. That's not how things go. And especially in world building, like going from a blank slate, a blank canvas, even if we're literally talking about a literal blank canvas for like a map drawing or something, the first thing you're going to put down is going to be trash. Like, it's going to not make any sense, and it's going to be like, it's going to make you feel like you can never actually get to the product that you want to have. Right. And ignoring that negative like voice, basically ignoring that like, oh, but its current state is unmanageably terrible. Like, no, it's not. Its current state is exactly what it's going to be until it makes its way towards something workable. It's not going to look like a finished product until it's a finished product, and forgetting that is dangerous.
and it's funny because like the feeling of it being so bad to like there's this weird curve, right? You start and there's like nothing, and then you have a thing, and then it's done. Mm-hmm. You know, like but you're in that like bad land for so long. Where it's not the thing you want it to be, that you forget that like that all the things you're doing are going to compile on themselves kind of exponentially, right?
It's also
I think it's a great way to look at it.
It's very easy to. You mentioned that, you know, it's done. For me, it's more of like it's going. It's almost done. Now I'm scared because now I gotta finish it. Oh no! Now I gotta go from 99 to 100%. It's like when you're playing a video game, the loading bar like hits 100% and then stops, and like you're not loaded in yet. You're just waiting. That's me. It's just like,
well, and like obviously in like certain careers, like you don't want to cut corners. If you're a structural engineer, please spend the last 95 to 100% on getting those all.
There's
those
a lot of structural
in
engineers who watch this live stream and are looking for advice.
Yeah, please, structural engineers. I'm talking about artistic endeavors here, not life or like surgeons. Please make it. please spend that time to get that cut perfect.
Man, this isn't looking good at all.
Don't stop at the 80%. I'm not talking about STEM careers here. I'm talking about artistic endeavors when it comes to if your goal is to improve and to become better, finish the things you work on and move on. Or else you will burn out and you will never become that person who you wanted to be in 5 years. Like straight up. Accept that what you are making right then is both the best thing you've ever made and the worst thing that you will ever make. And move on. Like
I've made some pretty bad stuff.
That's what I'm saying. I've made some like horrible things.
Some real stinkers in my history.
But like I don't worry about that anymore. I used to, and it was probably because I had like a small repertoire, right? So each one seemed much bigger than it is to me now. Mm-hmm. And there obviously there's a lot of important moments of learning, but again, getting to that place of being like surgeons that 80% were fine on cadavers. Please improve. Yes, working on a cadaver. Yeah, get that 80%. Keep working on cadavers. That's fine. Anyway. Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about the role of music at your table, because I've not had the pleasure of talking to somebody who actually has an intimate understanding of music while also running a tabletop. But specifically, I'm curious about both in fiction and like not necessarily in fiction music. So music that you'd play just to set the ambience at the table. But I'm also really curious your approach to representing music or musicians in fiction. And if you've ever done anything in sort of the space of like, oh, well, there's this like famous bard with these songs, or like this band is playing and like this is, this is their music or something. Curious if you've got any experience there.
I don't play a lot of bards. I think I've only ever played like a couple in one shots only in my games, probably because that's just my life. Like that's my real life.
Yeah.
So I tend to not play very many bards in games, and if I do, it has more to with them being like really amazing like speakers or in like inspirational type people. Like I play them more like a paladin than I do like a bard. Where like they just have this like natural charisma that is magical to others around them. But as far as like music meta, in game, there's these days like I'm really glad that I built up like over 100 songs of background music people can just use in whatever they want. Like I'm really proud of that. But I think that there are so many amazing like apps now. I always bring up Soncraft, SONCRAFT for Discord, and then also Pocket Bard. Is another really great app. And these people really make it super fun to include music in your games. Because one, it's easy, and they make it fun because I think my favorite thing that both these people have added are these intensity sliders, where like they essentially have all these different pieces of the song, right? All playing at the same time, but certain ones will be muted or like lower in the mix. And then as you turn up that intensity, like the drums will start going. Or like the cellos come in. So like you can turn up these intensity sliders to like add in that extra bit of oomph into your fight. So like they've taken music and technology and really moved it to this next piece. I think that the other thing that they both do, which is really cool, is they cut out the frequencies that are meant for human speech.
Interesting.
So
okay.
It makes it easy when you're talking around a table. The music can be like pretty bumping and you will still hear each other because it's not interfering with the frequencies that we speak at. So like you want to be
cool.
very... It's really clever, super smart, and I started doing it. I did it in my Tavern album, where I like cut out those frequencies so that it's really easy to like turn up that Tavern album, and your players will still be able to hear each other, which is I think like a really like cool way to make TTRPG music because you know it's going to be used with people talking around the table, and like people have like I have an audio processing disorder. Like I am that person who you will say something to. I'll say what, and then I'll respond. Like it takes me a while to like understand what people are saying. Not that I didn't hear you, but because I didn't understand yet what you meant. And that's audio processing. And some people have it more than others. So like being very conscientious when you're using music in your games is so very important.
I'm super
Um,
curious to know if you know off the top of your head. This is not a test. This is not a
no,
pressure. Give me your knowledge. I'm just curious, as a person who does a lot of working with audio frequencies for video editing, what frequencies are they cutting in those tracks? Do you happen to know like the frequency bands that they happen to be cutting?
yeah, I do. There's obviously everyone speaks in a different range, so it's not going to be perfect. But it's usually from like I would say like 400 to like 2000 hertz.
Okay.
So kind of like in that range is where they tend to cut. But again, every engineer is going to tell you something different. Um, but yeah,
Genuinely curious to just like take some music that I like and try cutting that frequency and see, one, how it sounds, and two, if I can tell a difference. That
there's one trick that I use is like obviously you could do a Google search for it and just be like, hey, what frequencies human speech is at or whatever. Just cut those frequencies out. But I usually on most programs there's a frequency enhance, like a vocal enhance EQ. For
Oh, yeah.
for like different apps or for video editors or whatever it might be, you can like turn on the vocal enhance EQ, right? Equalization. And you just set it to the opposite of whatever
invert,
it tells
yeah.
you there. You just invert it, and then it will actually, you'll be like, wow, I really can't, like I can hear the music, and I can also hear the person talking now. Like, this is really cool. So that's just like a fun tip that I usually give people. It's like, just take the software, invert whatever that is, and then it should give you that curve pretty
That's so
well.
smart.
Pretty neat, yeah.
I want to.
Content creation with Weston.
I'm learning. I want to dial back into. You mentioned the intensity slider on the music apps,
Yeah.
and on the topic of like using music to enhance the vibe of a given scene and like amping up the intensity so that it like feels bigger. One of my favorite things, and this is like in movies, in like video games, in anything, is sort of like compounding tracks. So like a song that starts off with like just maybe like the piano that's playing or whatever. It's like a melody. And then as things get more and more intense, those extra layers start to come in, and like it's not just a matter of now play the drums. It's a matter of like the drums were originally like a pretty like they were limiting themselves to just a handful of like mid-range toms, and now it's like the full, you've got these crash cymbals everywhere, and like everything is layering on top and getting more intense and evoking that sense of like increased stakes. Like as things go on, everything is bubbling up and becoming more chaotic and more intense. And I've actually worked with a musician before. Before I started doing content, I was working on a game for quite some time now. So I was working with a musician on multiple like boss battle musics that have the way that I approached it, and this was very rudimentary and to make it work with my programming. But I essentially worked with the musician to just make 3 versions of the same song at 3 different intensity levels. And as you made your way through the boss, like if every classic video game, fight the boss, do 3 points of damage or whatever to have victory. Each time that you like hurt the boss or whatever, the music then went on to the next track. It just like had all 3 tracks synced and playing and switched over. That trick, even with how rudimentary and rough that version of that game that I was working on was, it had placeholder art, it had like a bunch of clunky bugs and whatnot, but just having that music I got chills playtesting the boss fights. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm curious how to evoke that, like how to make that happen when you're doing a tabletop encounter. Because like I personally, in all of my time, I've DM'd for so long, I have actually never used music at my table. Not because I don't think that it's great, but because I've not found a way to do it that doesn't like break my flow, I guess.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying, is in the exact same way that you had that programmed to like move to the next like intensity level, right? As a musician, and I want to respond to Grace in the chat, who's like, yeah, that's gonna make your mids vanish. That's the whole point, Grace. We speak in mids. We need those to vanish so we can hear each other. Remember, the conversations are the most important part of the game. Grace is another great, really, really amazing TTRPG musician. See- So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so like the way that I like to look up to it is when you're building a song, you make the entire song first. So like you make all your drums and your orchestra, or like your cellos and your kind of your lower, boomy instruments. You have your like higher end instruments, your violins, your flutes, your trumpets, like those types of things, kind of near the top end. And if you want something to like amp up, usually what I'll do is you make it simple. So like at the lowest level, you like have your drums going, right? And that's just kind of your pulse, and it's going. And then you bring in like those lower instruments that are like dun 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 dun. That starts to bring it up. And then the more higher instruments you add, generally that adds intensity in. So you're kind of building from that ground floor upward. Because as soon as those violins hit, you're probably gonna be like rocking it, like or those choral vocals come in.
Oh yeah. The second
like,
that those chorals, yeah.
Yeah, you know you're in it, right? So like that idea of building from the bottom up, it's as simple as like you think of having each one of those things on a different track, right? And you're just turning up the volume on each one of those until you have this really like full big boss fight or whatever. And if you're fighting a couple goblins, maybe just keep it down with just the
yeah. But like that having that consistency though, having that sense of like, well, oh, this is just our battle music. This is the same music that's always played when we're doing a battle. But like, oh, I haven't heard this part of the song. Why is there a choir? Oh no! As the necromancer is starting to float. Wait a minute.
Stage 2, anyone? Yeah, this idea that what was I gonna say? So one of the things that I started doing in my worlds and in my TTRPG background music was I started creating alternate versions of these same songs. And like my vision there was hopefully to have this great orchestral track for when you're like fighting, and then you hear that same song, but like some tavern band is playing it, right? So there's this weird consistency throughout your world of this music. And then maybe you're playing a cyberpunk game, and then you're like, wait, is that the same song? So like these tracks like evolve and change, but they have similar melodies and similar like drum patterns, and you feel connected to this music. I also love making like lo-fi versions of fantasy music, and like so like it's just like the calm version, right? So you have this very similar vision, similar overlay, overworld music, right? But in all these different contexts. So there's this beautiful consistency throughout your world. Continuity is the word I'm looking for throughout your world. So that was kind of the vision there when I initially was writing these songs and creating these alternate versions. It's like that was do people actually use that? Probably not. But for me, like I'm always looking for ways to re-envision and to be inspired to create new things. So
I actually noticed that in Baldur's Gate recently. They do it a ton.
Good
but
example.
Really early on, the harpies, like the harpy fight that's near the Druid Grove.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, the harpies song, their like siren song that they sing to put you into a trance. That song can be found all over the place, and like I love the idea that it's an in-fiction reference to like these people heard that music. They heard the harpies, like they heard some mysterious tune on the wind, and it has sort of like made its way throughout the zeitgeist. And like that's just such good subtle world building. Like if there was, to what you just said of like having the battle music and then there's a band playing music in a tavern, mixing that up with another one of my favorite concepts, which is like something that's there that really shouldn't be there, and only like you only know it shouldn't be there if you know, like if you're like in on it or something. So for example, you hear a song start playing in the tavern, and that song is only like that song is only known by people associated with like some dark evil group or something. But like here it is just being played like a casual tavern song. What's going on here? And like using music to have that subtler meaning of like what led to these people having this melody.
I those types of things I feel like obviously are very much for the artist. And a lot of people miss those kind of subtleties. Like I imagine the siren song, the harpy song, being played by a bard somewhere. It's like, oh, I just came up with this melody. Oh, did you?
I think Alfira does that. I think the bard. I think she eventually makes a song that sounds like it.
I don't remember, but that would be rad. If that.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly.
No. But this idea that like, oh, that's where that song came from. You know, that kind of, as an artist looking for deeper meanings, even if no one else gets it, those things keep us creating, and they actually start. I feel like they start to build our style, right? They start to build that to see that. Every like somebody hears it and knows you, and the same thing artist style. You see somebody's art style, like, oh, that's Van Gogh, or oh, that's Monet. Like you start to understand who these people are through their art, and it has to do with those consistent things, right? It has to do with those consistent, you know, an artist's brush strokes, or it's the way that they draw their eyes, or the way that they make their eyes full. Like there's all these different things that and in music, there's like, oh man, this person really loves to add in, you know, tambourine into their, or they really love to write a melody that is like a send sentence, or they really love call and response type of style, and you like, unbeknownst to you, you just start to do those things, in spite of like trying to always make your music sound different. There's always these like really beautiful consistencies. Yeah,
interpreting okay. God, my brain just went 7 different directions based on what you just said.
That's fine.
In like, now I'm thinking about the inherent, sort of what we talked about earlier with art begetting art, and the inherent personal touches, as you alluded to earlier, with how perfectly impersonating somebody or perfectly recreating someone's work is a very difficult skill, but taking that inspiration and putting your own spin on it, whether you intend to or not, like whether you saw it and said, I want to put my spin on that, or I want to try to emulate this and I couldn't do it perfectly. Oops, I accidentally put my spin on it. Like, that absolutely works both in fiction and also just in general real world creative work. But the in fiction side of things, of here's some creative concept that's established in our world, and here's like 86 different variants of it based on these different, either, you know, bards throughout history got a hold of some melody and tweaked it, or like a painter saw this one thing, like some amazing artifact, and like was the first person to ever capture it, and then every painter since then has just been playing a game of telephone of like, what is this object, and now it's some mythical thing. I absolutely love the imperfection that humans bring to any kind of endeavor or any kind of creative process, because that causes those slight tweaks that ultimately create something new.
Yeah, the inability for us to be perfectly consistent is what makes music really fantastic. I mean, our very thing that we tend to hate in ourselves, right? These imperfections, these weaknesses, are the things that make life beautiful and colorful and exciting. And again, we're not talking about structural engineers. Like, we don't need buildings. We don't need, falling is not exciting. We can appreciate them standing up. If you're a surgeon, like, just do it right.
This building is falling apart, and I think that's beautiful. I just think it's creatively exciting that this building is structurally unsound.
I mean, we, you know, sometimes, you know, look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa or whatever. It can be very interesting.
I mean, yeah. Oops.
Or even this idea that like the Statue of Liberty turned green. Like,
yeah.
like there's like interesting things. that happened that like because of its imperfection, it's now iconic.
Yeah, reminder: the
and
Statue of Liberty is not supposed to be green. Oops. We
Yeah,
really
it's copper, right?
Yeah, it's copper.
Yeah, it's so
and
fun.
Minecraft taught me that copper turns green. I'm pretty sure that's what came. I'm pretty sure Minecraft came first, and then the Statue of
Yes.
Liberty was modeled after that.
It was, yeah. Mojang sent the Statue of Liberty over as a gift to the United States
after Microsoft purchased. As a thank you for Microsoft purchasing Minecraft.
Exactly. Thank you for buying our game.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. I'm pretty sure that was the way that things went. Oh, geez. Yeah, but yeah. I so don't, and that's why I tell people again. You're going. Don't judge yourself on the artist that you are today. Prepare yourself for the artist that you will be in 3 years and 5 years. And let that be your hope. Let that be your drive. That like emulate the behaviors that you know will get you to be that place then. And we were just talking about this idea, right? Like as an artist, as an artist who's just getting started, I don't care that I have chosen to not worry about the art I make right now. I just want to make it, do my best with it, finish it, move on to the next one, finish it, because I know that in that process, I will be a much better artist in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and it will feel much more natural. I actually made that mistake, which is why I'm not as good of a guitarist as I am, as I could have been.
You were like too perfectionist with the guitar?
I didn't just finish things and move on. I would stay with the same song for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And instead of just becoming a really great songwriter and being like, this song isn't perfect, but it's where I'm at. This is real to me. This is where I am right now. I would work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it. And that didn't serve me. Like now as a songwriter, what served me was doing 80 parodies. And I learned more doing those 80 parodies and writing lyrics for those 80 parodies than I ever did, songwriting full songs in a band. And that led me to be able to write 300-400 songs. Because I just did it from start to finish. I didn't worry about it too much. The pressure was kind of off because if it was bad, nobody would see it. And I believed that it wasn't going to be bad. And start to finish. And then you realize at one point you're like, oh, I can just do this. I can just write lyrics
I can just make songs.
Yeah, I can just make songs. So
that's wild. That's a superpower.
Anyway, and meanwhile, my guitar playing is mediocre.
I actually hate that I'm about to quote Mr. Beast, but I mean, like undeniably successful creative type. But
oh yeah,
he
absolutely.
had some quote about like, what would you say to an aspiring creator or whatever. And his quote was pretty poignant. It was pretty concise and poignant, which was every time that you set out to do something, or like every time that you go to like make a video in this case, just pick one thing and try to improve on that over your past video.
Oh, cool.
Like just pick one small little tweak. Okay, like this time I'm going to try to like work on the audio volume leveling, like something as little as possible, but just like pick one little thing and improve on that incrementally. And over time, you're going to just incrementally build up to exactly what you just said. Like now suddenly, oh, I just innately know how to do like audio mastering now. Like it's just like a thing that I can just do while distracted, or like, much quicker.
Well, again, that idea that your 80% is just professional level.
Yeah.
like that becomes your 80%.
Yeah.
Is that now? Oh, like, and I was telling my friend, one of my friends who was involved in like a group project. That's a funny way to say it, but I'll keep it nice and vague. And they were kind of stressing about it, and they were like there's all these things and like all these people on it, and I was like, give your 80% on it, and it will be better than anything else anyone ever than any of the other people on that track. And they did that exact same that exact thing that I said. I was like, even give your 60% and it will be better than anyone else. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that and see how it turns out. Sure enough, nobody else even came close because I know who this person is and I know the level they're at, even if they didn't. So that was a really fun interpretation of that, being like, yeah, see, like you didn't have to try as hard as you thought.
Yeah.
And also when we hold on, I'm reading text. Oh, I have the ball. Nope, y'all are never getting it back.
My ball.
It's my ball now. I'm taking this and going home. But yeah, like it's true. Like it is just true. And like there are times when you'll spend a little bit more time on those things to get them to a point where you need them to be. But most of the time that is not the case. Just trust that like this is a stage in your life and it will be, and you're going to keep getting better and better and better. And this is not the end. This is not the end all be all. Another piece of advice that I give a lot of creators is like, no matter how big a single project seems to you, it's not going to be that, it's always going to be less important than you think it is. And it's usually the things that surprise you that become those important things. So don't worry about it. You know, like be as consistent as you can. Start and finish, start and finish, start and finish. And your greatness will be shown to you by other people. They will say, this song really like hit me in a different way, or this picture hit me in a different way. And you do that enough times. That was not where I needed to take that sentence. And
roll it back, just sort of.
And like, yeah, the idea that you are going to decide the piece of work that is going to stick with everybody is false.
Oh yeah, no.
the thing that will stick with everybody will be a surprise to you, especially.
Yeah, I stand in front of a camera holding a yellow object.
It's hanging up on the wall behind you.
Didn't see that one coming, but
yeah,
sure. Right? I guess this is where we are. We are about an hour into the stream. I'm gonna call a quick break for us. So we're just gonna take a short, just 5 or so minute break, and when we get back, we will be talking more about world building, answering any questions that y'all have. If anybody wants to submit a question, I think we're actually pretty light on questions right now. So head to trail.as/ww. There's a link in chat if you want to ask us a question to get to in the second half of this here stream. Go ahead and submit it there. But we'll be back just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere, or we'll be sad. Okay.
I would be very sad, yeah.
You'd be, look how sad. You don't want to make him sad. Look at that sad. Look at how sad that face is. You don't want to do that. Be back soon. And we're back.
Hey.
And hopefully, yay, the audio is working for both of us. Wonderful. Excellent. So, hello. If you are just joining us, welcome to World Building Wednesdays. My name is Endeavorance, and I am joined today by Wes, aka Arcane Anthems. Incredible musician, incredible TTRPG boy. Just kind of incredible all around, really. That's what we like.
Well, that's very kind. That's very kind.
I
try my best to be well-rounded.
Well, I think that you are as round as can be. Is that a compliment?
Just a real thick little orb I am. Just bouncing down the stairs.
Just the most rotund.
Rotund.
Very good. This is world building. So let's talk about that. You mentioned, I'm super interested in hearing about your approach to world building sort of at large, and how it's changed over the years. You mentioned that you started pretty young, like around age 7, playing with Legos and didn't really realize until it was maybe later on that like, oh, I was doing world building. And you mentioned at the outset of the stream that while playing with the Legos, you would go as far as to like come up with an economy system and like have like currency or like minerals that people were going to mine. I'm super curious, like what is your favorite like sort of anchor into world building? Is it still sort of like the meticulous aspect of the economy and the specifics, or what gets you going?
I'm so bad at shopping. I feel like everybody struggles with that, like populating stores with things and like trying to keep the economy right. That's very, very difficult. But I think even like professional game designers struggle with that, just in general.
Valve literally hired a economist, like the state, like the government economics boy from I think like Italy, when they were working on a game that had like a really specific economy thing going on. The game flopped.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated. So like for me, it's less that now. For me now, it has everything to do with pulling from my characters, from my player characters, right? Making their backstories the real like focus of everything, because nobody plays a TTRPG to be like a side character, right? Like they all want to be the main character, so this story should be about them. So pulling from their backstories makes your life a lot easier. And it makes it way more engaging, way more fun, assuming that that's the kind of game that your players want to play, right? When I first started playing, my players didn't know that that's what they were getting themselves into, so I was kind of playing into the possibilities of their characters. I would say things like, oh, you know this person, this is your cousin, and then they would be like, oh, it's my cousin, okay. So like you kind of introduce those possibilities into them, and then you give them opportunities to create. You throw it back at them and you say like, yeah, what was their name? Or like, hey, we're now heading to this town, or this town exists. What was the name of that town?
Yeah.
Who ran it? It's your hometown, you know, like, and you can prompt them beforehand and send them messages and things. But like, my favorite thing about world building is I'm kind of in charge of the kind of overarching plot, right? Like that's generally like, that's how I'm building. I'm building like, here's this end goal. This is the thing that these people are working toward, and then you build backwards from there, right? You cover it and think of it like burying a treasure, and then you cover it with all these layers of dirt, right? So you know what's in there. You know what's in the treasure chest. Yeah, like you know what's in that treasure chest. You know exactly what, like how it got there. You know all these things, and then you just start burying it with layer after layer after layer of different things, right? And you build it up to where they start digging, and then they have to dig through all these different things that are happening to find this thing that you put there. A lot of people are like, how did they come up with that twist? They're like, well, because to them it was never a twist. To them it was always
the
there.
Original point. Yeah.
So yes, you're very much Triple Book. You're very much reverse engineering adventures or mysteries, right? You start with this end goal that seems very, you know, like, oh, the knife was made of ice. Like you start with that.
Yeah.
And then you bury it with all these other things that are happening. And that way you can like put these little nuggets of like truth. During my last campaign, it was one of these ones where like my friends their mother-in-law was in town, so she was around to like watch the baby at night. So they're like, we're doing a campaign tomorrow. Like we're starting a campaign tomorrow. So I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, all right.
So I had 24 hours to come up with a campaign.
God, okay.
And it ended up being like a 6-session campaign. And at the end of the campaign, and I came up with this idea that like, okay, so everybody thinks this volcano is going to explode, but really it's this person down there who's bringing back this like machinery that's been offline forever, and that's what's causing all this smoke, right? So that was the idea, and like causing all these earthquakes and things. So I started with that idea, right? And that ended up being like a twist. Like what the heck? But to me, that was the thing that was always there. So the enemy ended up being this like dragon, right? This like dragon that was like half torn apart, and he was like rebuilding a body for himself. So it was like it was fun. Like, it was a cool thing. But at the end, one of my players asked me, they're like, what did you say? And she's a very avid reader and a very good writer. And she asked me like, what were the indications that this was a dragon? And I'm so glad that I laid these pieces. I said, well, the first person you found that you cast Speak with Dead with on, right, was this person, and they said that they weren't killed by a person. They were killed by a monster. So that was kind of thing one, right? Yeah. And then like the first dragon you met, and the first history that you learned was that long ago, all these chromatic dragons had been wiped off the face of the earth. So there was just these good aligned dragons left. And so like that was the second thing. And then like they started finding out that as they were going through these caverns, that like the walls were made of not iron, but like dragon scales of all these different chromatic dragons. So like you go through and you start to see all these little pieces, right? Leading to this idea that like, oh, it's this dragon who's bringing back this ancient technology that was used to destroy him and his kind. So it was like it was fun to be able to kind of reverse, again, them seeing the reverse engineering and being like, yeah, there's like 6 different hints that I dropped as in regards to what this is. So like, again, Dragon Tech, yes, it was very fun. I love like Magitech, type Victorian steampunky stuff. So Dragon Tech. But yeah, so like when you know the end, don't think to figure out the end. That's way harder. Just know the end, and then just cause all these other things to rotate around it. And if your players guess it, then great. And if your players have a better idea, then change the ending. Like,
not to mention the amount of things that can happen between coming up with what your ending might be and actually getting there. The number of things that just like crop up that you can then be like, ooh, I'm just gonna go ahead and take this and I'm going to rework it over here. And they were the big bad this whole time. The big bad that I had, they're just this person that is much more now, that happened to accidentally become much more story important, is now the person that was going to be the big bad. And also vice versa. Like, oh, hey, there's this like big important NPC. They're just going to add a bunch of mess to the story. Like, they're just going to add a bunch of red herrings and distractions and be the thing that makes it feel like I did a plot twist, when in reality, they did a plot twist to their own dang selves because they got way over invested in this like side story or something. But yeah, the riffing off of the players, the asking a player, what is your hometown called? This is your cousin, what's their name? That, in one interpretation, is lazy. On the other hand, is way more inclusive and supportive, I think, and creates way better worlds because you're not limited to your preconception. Exactly what like, more or less what I just said around like, if everything was exactly how you wanted it to be, you wouldn't get as many opportunities for all those extra, all that cruft and confusion and distraction that you can then leverage. Because you're probably going to be more laser focused on railroading and getting them to the plot points that you want to get them to, as opposed to letting them carve a path through this world. And you're just kind of like, they're on a train and you're just laying the tracks down in front of them as the train is going. But that is, that's immersive.
It's going to be impossible to have all the details.
Yeah.
Because they're going to ask that one question that you're just like, I didn't think of. Like, essentially, you're going to waste so much time, like trying to flesh out this entire world that you could have just spent group storytelling.
Yeah.
And that makes the world way more personal to these characters. Like my gnome paladin, who when I asked this question of him, just said, I was like, what's the name of your town? And he like stuttered over the word, whatever he was gonna say, and he said Snitterton. And I was like, okay, like why not? Like, we have towns that have way worse names than that.
Yep.
Like,
I mean, the real world has a
that
butt as a town,
yeah,
and like hell.
Like, I'm pretty sure there's a Butthole, Michigan, or something ridiculous. Like the world is strange. Like the real world is stranger than fiction. So the fact that like the idea that like you will meet like 3 people named Steve in one day actually could happen.
Yeah.
Like that is real life. Randomness is not what people think it is, right? Like randomness, true randomness will actually give you similar results multiple times, which is like so weird. So we have to engineer what we want randomness to be.
Yeah, uniform or like standardized randomness, like a what's the word called? Pseudo random. Yeah, pseudo randomness.
Pseudo randomness feels more random than actual randomness does.
Because we want to see we don't want to see the same number twice in a row ever. Because then, what the hell is this? This is a pattern. I've identified a pattern. I can't do that. That's not random. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see that in Baldur's Gate, right? There's like 2 different forms of rolling. They have like true random, and then they have their pseudo random.
I should turn on true random because I have the pseudo random on right now, and I just this morning rolled like a 1, then a 2, then a 3.
I actually initially started playing with true random. You do not want that in your life.
Oh God.
It leads to some really horrible outcomes. It's scary bad. I mean, good thing for save scumming.
Oh well, my current run is honor mode, so that's not can't be doing that.
Never mind.
Yeah.
No, do your thing.
Not happening.
But yeah, this idea that like a better game is one that is perfectly planned out and perfectly played through is false. Like it's just not false, because I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how amazingly talented you are, I don't care how much time you have. Games that revolve around group storytelling are better when they are told as a group.
Facts. Huge facts.
I mean, duh. Like, of course they are. Like, that is what these games are designed to be. Yeah. So, like, let it be that. And use that as put that in your tool belt as a tool that you reach for constantly. And you will find that the games become more personal to you, more personal to your players. People will be more invested. There won't be so many cancellations on your games. Like, you'll start to notice a pattern on these things. It will become a priority in their life.
I want to make I want to point out something. This is way too gooby, perhaps, but it's like a jam session. Yep. It's like you're getting together with a bunch of creative people and everyone's bringing a little bit of something and saying, oh, that's great, but what about this? Like, let me, while you're doing that, I'll add this to it, and now we have something that's better than the sum of its parts. And while I feel terrible on this here episode of World Building Wednesday having a musician on and being like, world building is like a jam session, it kind of is it kind of is.
One of my biggest regrets as a musician, I was in a rock band for 10 years, was that I had, I railroaded my band members. Me and this other songwriter in the group, we railroaded our band members. So I don't actually know what that band would have sounded like
if everybody could just bring their own.
If everyone just brought their inspiration, had I been the person that I am now, then we may have been something that pushed past the normal, because I would have relied on them and trusted them to do what, I wanted them to be there to do. And so, yes, absolutely, what you're saying. I'm a different GM now.
Yeah.
Like I see the beauty in in letting people exist in their spaces, in trusting them, in trusting their experience, and in having a really phenomenal group and creating a really phenomenal story. So yes, 1,000%.
I think one of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest things that stops people from feeling comfortable with the collaborative storytelling side of things, is it's tied to the same hesitancy that we discussed earlier around not being ready to play, like not being ready to just let go and be vulnerably honest, and not not layer everything in 12 layers of irony and jokes as a defense mechanism. Because of course, like one of the first things that happens when you have people who aren't really used to doing any of that is they make joke characters. They make silly, like way too silly characters that are basically just a gag and like can't sustain themselves off of that one gag for too long. Or they make a joke town where they're like, oh, I come from Poopsville, and everyone in Poopsville is named John because you gotta go to the John. And like, okay, I get that you're sort of trying, but what I know is that you're holding back. Like what I know is that is not actually what you're capable of. And if you're capable of coming up with a funny haha joke, you're probably capable of coming up with something super meaningful that will be meaningful to you and meaningful to everybody else at this table for months, if not years to come. And you can still bring that levity, like bring yourself to it, but bring your like authentic self to it, not your I'm afraid to open up self. But I've definitely had the experience of sitting down at a table with a variety of experienced players, and some of them were able to bring that meaningful backstory, like meaningfully creating side characters and places from their history, and then others who, when I got to them to explain their character, they were deer in headlights because all they did was make a gag. And it's like, it's almost, it's less rewarding that way. Like they didn't lean in and didn't get sort of the payoff of leaning in. And so I see what you're saying of, on the other side of things, preventing people from leaning in, you know, like being a blocker from letting somebody be their most authentic creative self in that group setting. I've been that guy. I've absolutely been that guy. When I first started DMing, I was that guy. I was like, no, this is my world. You don't get to tell me what's in my world. It's my world, it's my rules. That sucks. That's not fun. No one likes that guy. That guy gets like kicked out of cons and is at a table by himself. No one likes that guy.
Well, and I was also gonna say is like when I started this journey as a GM, I had to do things that would inspire my players to roleplay, right? Like I had to teach them how to do that. It's not something that everyone is gonna know how to do or know what it looks like. So being able to give them prompts that then allow them an opportunity to experiment and to practice and to, you know, like sometimes you have to give them very good prompts. I was, again, one of the reasons that I love moderating is that I love asking good questions, and a good question will not stump your panelists. A good question, or your interviewees, it will inspire them to say something that they didn't even know was inside of them. Right? Like that's what good questions do. So when you're inspiring people to be better role players, you want to give them those types of opportunities. You want to gamify it a little bit, right? Like if they aren't quite sure about something, then you could say, okay, well, you know, like let's say you give them the prompt of like, hey, tell me something from your childhood. And they're just like, I don't quite know what to do with that, right? And you say like, okay, roll a die for me. 1 will be a sad memory, and 10 will be a happy memory. And then they roll that die, and then they're like, okay, so it's a happy memory. Okay, so you're kind of prompting them along the way, right?
Yeah.
You're giving them these ideas, and I always encourage, like, what's the first, like, happy memory that pops in your head for this character? Like, just give me whatever it is that's right there. Like, no matter how simple or easy you think it is, that's the right answer. And then they'll be like, oh, happy memory from this character's childhood. We went to the mountains once, and we all sat together, and we ate sandwiches that my mom made. Like that's
I love
that's
that,
a
though.
cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's amazing. Like even if it's a simple thing, when you apply a simple real life thing to a fictional character, it like breathes life into them. And you're like, oh, you have a mom? Like, oh, like what were the mountains like?
What was the
You
sandwich?
start
And now,
you
like,
start to
yeah.
build it. Because we take our simple everyday lives and we live them every single day, and we think that that's just how every life is. So we don't see the unique like beautifulness that is each of our lives. And once we present that to somebody else, they're like, wait a minute, you do that? Like, that's really kind of interesting. That's very different from me. So I always tell people, like, go with your gut at first, and obviously like seek to improve and seek to, become more creative. But like, if you go with your gut at first, even like a rescue the princess plot can be so much fun. Like, when you're starting out, don't worry so much about coming up with like this really amazing idea. Like, no, like your friends just want to play a game together.
Yeah.
These people just want to be in a world with you all for once. So just like let those, whatever that natural inclination is, assuming you're a good person, whatever those like ideas are, put a little filter on it, whatever, but like follow those, because that's going to be unique. Your life experience will show, like, if every single one of us did a rescue the princess trope, right, in our game, it would look very different for every single one of us. It would be a completely different game. So just believe that is the case, that everything, that has been created, and we are just, the uniqueness will come from living those experiences.
I think
that makes sense. So like, yeah.
What you said about the memory, the random example you gave, I don't know if you just came up with that or if that was the actual example they gave of eating a sandwich by that, but like immediately, like my brain went into like, what can I do with this? How can I fuck with this character using this one memory of them eating sandwiches by a mountainside with their mom? And but instantly that added so much. Something as simple as I ate sandwiches looking over the mountains with my mom. Now you've got 3 things to work with there. Yeah, as you said, you've got the mom. What mountain range? Does that mean that you prefer mountains? Are you a ranger and your preferred terrain is mountains? Are you into that sandwich? Would that sandwich bring back a rush of memories? Would it be strange for you to encounter that sandwich in your day-to-day travels? Like, was it a special thing that your mom made that like no one else would have made, but like then you found someone else who actually makes, that does like some weird thing with their sandwiches that like harkens back, and now you're like, oh my god, memories of home. And there's so much there already just from something as simple as I ate a sandwich. And that's not a gag. Like, it's real. It adds humanity in the sense of, personification, not literal humans, because you can be whatever you want to be, but it adds that depth of character, even if it seems so stupid and simple and trivial. Like, I ate a sandwich looking over the mountains. It's not, everybody else's backstory might be, I felled dragons and it was the greatest apprentice scholar ever, blah, blah, blah. Like, I had a sandwich once. It was a pretty good sandwich. I think about it sometimes.
And everyone's like, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard. Yes, so I encourage you to, if your players are new to play, you might have to teach them how to play. And I'm not talking about like reading out of a book. Like, mechanics can be taught, mechanics can be learned, and they'll be forgotten and all those things. But like, reteaching play is critical to you having like a fun, successful game.
I wanna on that topic, I just want to highlight what Shay said in chat a little bit ago, reinforcing the fact that there are no bad answers. D&D and world building does not have rigid no, don't do this like traditional board games. So
absolutely,
very much on the topic of relearning to play, or relearning to play boundlessly.
And you think about like how kids play, like it tends to be very self-serving, and hopefully as adults we have learned to play selflessly, with one another. And that's where the magic really begins to happen. Is when we begin to play selflessly with one another. We begin to play off of, Emmy was talking about yes-anding and improv, and that's all it is we are playing with each other as opposed to playing against one another. And learning those skills can be very, very helpful. But like, you can also just sit around the table. My home, I often forget, like none of my home game people except for one of them is a professional improv actor. One of them is a professional improv actor. He's hilarious. He's fantastic. Love him to death. Chris Daly, if you want to look him up, Dungeon Heads. Very, very amazing artist. But everyone else doesn't do this. Like, this is not their thing. Like, some of them are like writers, and like a couple of them are podcasters and things. But like, this isn't, being on stage and play acting is not their thing. But they have gotten so good. They're so good at this. Like, now they have caught it. Like, they have caught the vision, and they are so good at it. Even the one of the group who is the most shy comes up with this stuff that just blasts me to the moon. I mean, I am like, I cannot believe you just said that. Like, because you do it enough and it just becomes fun.
Yeah.
Like, you just think, you start to really lean into the aspects of it that are fun for you. So okay, we're not really talking about world building anymore, but this is how I play the game.
Yeah.
Like, this is what my play style is getting the players invested. Even in my one shots that I run, I want the players to feel like they have been playing together with this group forever.
Yeah.
And you do that very quickly by allowing these players opportunities to be vulnerable in the group. It ties people together very, very quickly.
I think there's oh god, I had a really salient point. It's now escaping me. I hate I can feel it just like
it drives
leaving my brain. Largely around I remember. Iteration.
There it is.
Iteration. So having people who are shy and kind of coming out of their shell from repeat exposure for one, it's just like, that's how human do, is getting better at it by having repeat exposure, especially if it's a thing that you're like kind of averse to at first. But in the context of world building, bringing your world to the table, playing around in it for a while, seeing what shakes out, seeing what breaks, seeing what the players who both are experienced do to the world and who are inexperienced do in ways that you don't expect, and then stepping back, building more on that world before coming back to the next session, looping in all the mess that they made and turning it from a mess into structure and having it mean something for them. That is the beauty, I think, of the having your table where everyone is invested and everyone is playing together and we're just trying to be in this space. It's only going to get better as time goes on and as people experience learn how to better play their characters, learn how to better express themselves, learn how to better explore the world and suggest bits and pieces to be a part of that world. Group, I guess it's kind of like what is it, designed by committee, only a good version of that.
Yeah. But positive. Yeah. I was asked what it means to be a GM once, which is like, you think like that's like an easy question. Like, you run the game, you try and keep like the rules going, and you're kind of the arbiter of things. You generally know like what, like you're in charge of kind of keeping the plot. I think my answer at the time was, your job is to keep tempo. So your job is to keep things moving forward. That's really like what your job as a GM is, right? So if people are getting bored, if you're feeling things slowing down, then you speed them up. You make things happen. And I definitely believe that, but I also think that as a GM, that is also your job. Your job is to take the mess and turn it into something, to the cake, right? To take the ingredients to find out what ingredients
you need to look at your players
have.
like ingredients. and you need
Yeah,
to
exactly.
grind them up, and you need to batter them and throw a few eggs,
Perfect.
stick them in an
Yeah.
oven, and then once they pass
And
the knife test, once you can stick a knife into your friends and pull it back out and it comes out clean,
oh my god. It's
then
they're all
you've
dead,
done world
and
building.
Then you're basically a surgeon.
Yeah. And that's how you do 80% of being a surgeon.
I mean, that's how I got started.
Full circle.
But yeah, so like that is your job, right? But at the same time, I also think that that's kind of everyone's job, is to be paying attention to each other, and to ask those questions of each other, right? To create those moments as a player. I think that's where being a GM and being a player are really like help each other out. I think that if you are a GM and you've never been a player, you're doing a disservice to all of your players, because you need to know what it's like to be a player, and what feels fun as a player and what feels unfun as a player.
And that was
and it helps you.
That's
Yeah,
I can say from personal experience 100% yes. Like the bad version of me as a GM that I mentioned earlier was pre me ever being a player. It was like, we need someone to be a GM, and I was like, I like doing world building and storytelling, and then I treated it as if, like, all of my experience was in game development, and it was me and my computer, and I was building the world that you would play, right? And so I was approaching it the same way of like, oh, I'm building the world that you're playing in. I am the creator, you are the consumer, and not I am the sort of like director or stage manager, and you are an actor, only with more agency. You're not just reading the script I gave you.
Right.
You're the improv actor.
Right. Yeah. So be a player, be a GM. You will become better at both by doing the other thing. And be that person who can take the improv mess and use it later. Use those ingredients. Like that's really all these bakers are, right? That's what these really amazing GMs do, is they trust their players trust them, and they just roll because they believe that we were talking earlier about that artistic creation process, right? And how there's always that section where you're like not quite sure what this is going to look like in the end. And that's true.
The oh shit
these
section.
Types of experiences. Yeah, exactly. Like these, they just don't worry about that because they believe in everyone around that table. So it's really a shame that in our community we have this behavior or trope around games never finishing. Because like I was saying, I think that you learn a lot more by playing a short campaign that you complete than a long one that you don't.
Yeah, not everyone has to be Critical Role.
No, and I think that it's totally. I think it's a better idea to start your players off with a campaign that is shorter. Like honestly, because they'll get to know like, oh, I didn't really like playing this sorcerer class. I'm gonna try. I have an idea for something different that I might like more. So you let them be. Yes, and Emmy is very good at short campaigns. But yeah, short campaigns teach you way more than a super long campaign would. Even if long campaigns like are great and they are kind of the archetypal like amazing experience, and I can attest that 6-year campaign will never leave us. That is our brains. That is like a lot of our references and our jokes now.
Yeah,
like,
I mean at that point it is a part of you. That is a 6-year creative endeavor. That is like a person working on their masterwork for a decade, like that's significant.
So I always encourage people like start with short. If people really love their characters, have them bring them back. Like they can play them again. Like who says they can't? Not
to mention you can have your short campaign, then play again in that same world and meet the characters that you played in the first campaign, or have their impacts have downstream effects.
Yeah. So GMing tips.
Yay. We've got about just 20 minutes left on the stream. I want to ask you a few questions just to dig down into sort of your experiences and your preferences and whatnot. So I'm curious,
Absolutely.
what world have you spent the most time in, or is your favorite setting to just share? If someone comes to you and is like, I want to play D&D, you're like, I got the setting for you, or like, have I got the premise for you? Do you have a go-to world or premise?
Yeah, I created a world. I think my favorite world that I've ever built was one where essentially all the gods left.
Bye.
And essentially, like, magic got too dangerous. They blessed the populations too heavily with it.
Oh no.
To the point where they were starting to kind of like overcome or overwhelm the gods, and it became very dangerous for them. The gods left. So the world is, and when that happened, there were these giant like voids, right, left in the cosmos of being in charge. And a human ascended to kind of control this like nature domain, the natural world. Another human ascended, and they kind of controlled the astral plane, the darker side of things. And then a angel got left behind, and so they are all that's left of divinity. So there's this idea of these like three gods, and the reason that I prefer smaller pantheons. I love small pantheons, really precise pantheons, where these people, you know, so essentially you have this like order in nature, you have chaos, and then you have I guess nature's not. Nature is natural. Nature is natural. Then you have this astral being this chaos force. Then you have this divinity being like lawful, right? But none of them really want the job. So it ends up being like really, really fun. And this world specifically is set in a like post industrial kind of capitalist system. And I think the favorite thing about this world that I pulled from Shadowrun is that the reason that I call this world Tyrants. Right? That's the name of the world. And in Tyrants, each city is head up by a great monster of some kind. There's like an onyx dragon that rules one. There's a beholder that rules another. There's like all these like big, you know, fantasy creatures that control each city. And then there's all the people inside of it who are trying to live their lives in kind of this like industrialist, terrible capitalist society, trying to appease these horde gatherers in these different cities, while those people also, you know, are trying to live their lives, appease their god, while the tyrants are fighting each other, right, for their protecting their own cities. So it's a really like, I think, a very interesting, like, wild world to be in. And also in that world, there's this idea of dissonance, where like magic users get kind of punished, because specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, they are so overpowered. And in my opinion, it has to do with the fact that D&D is not a great melee class system. They don't do melee fighting very well.
No.
So it's very much a magic heavy world. So adding in a little bit more of this, like, I call it dissonance, and it's essentially like magic radiation that permeates whenever it's used. So it's this idea. So it's a very fun world, fun to visit, I guess, not to actually live in.
Yeah, you wouldn't really want to vacation there necessarily.
No. But it's great. It's all about these secret societies. It's kind of like a Victorian style dress and wear, very like, I don't know. It's a really interesting, fun place to GM.
I'm super curious to hear more about your thoughts on pantheon size. You mentioned how much you prefer a small pantheon. I don't think I've ever really thought about my preference of a large or small pantheon. I'm curious why you prefer a small pantheon. I can think of some reasons, but curious yours.
I prefer small pantheons because I want the players to understand the pantheon.
Sure, yeah.
Like, and when there's like 23 gods and demigods, and like, they don't, again, when there's too many decisions, you don't choose anything.
Yeah.
You don't know anything. So I want everyone to know who the angel is. When we speak of the angel, every one of the players knows who that is. when we speak of, the astral agent, everyone knows who that is. So like that way, all the players have this information and they know the context for it. It's not like, oh, the god of my left pinky toe. Like
That's a
like,
good god, though. That's a solid
yeah, like
god.
so solid, keeps you on the floor. Like it's really, really. But
Gets stubbed
yeah,
a couple times though.
Catch them on feetpics.com. So like, but I mean, WikiFeet, whatever.
The perennial god of WikiFeet.
Yeah, to me, it becomes overly complex to the point where it doesn't matter. Like, nobody cares about your god when there's 50 gods. So that's why I personally prefer small pantheons. And then I also like the idea of you feeling as though, like, you can, like, look at something and, like, a symbol of it and know kind of what it is, what it's about. And you can still have mysteries. Like, you can still have, devils and demons and things like that are, but I just prefer smaller pantheons. I think that there is beauty in simplicity.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also beauty in my players ever remembering any of the characters that are involved in the story. And so having fewer of those is also very, very useful for sure. Having a relatable pantheon, I like what you said about having sort of like 3 distinctly different identifiable entities, like the angel versus the humans, and then there's the 2 different humans that have very obviously different purposes.
Right.
Digging that. Another question.
What are your thoughts on it now that you're thinking about it?
Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Are you a large pantheon person? Are you a small pantheon person?
I am a... Would it be wild for me to say I'm a no pantheon person? Like, would that be outlandish? Because
no, not even a little bit.
I have like 4 main worlds that I kind of toy around with, and half of them, 2 of them, don't have a pantheon for a like in fiction reason, and I essentially replace having gods with having like fundamental forces that can manifest in different ways. And they range from inanimate to inherent to the fabric of reality, but they're not necessarily a god or entity or anything like that. For the worlds that I have with gods, I've largely done pantheons of 4. Just like, okay. I tend to do a very like cardinal direction, like north associates with this feeling, associates with this concept, and the god associated with all of that is blah, and like their altar is in the north. I like to do spatially like located stuff. It helps me think, I guess. So for one of my worlds, I have essentially a north, south, east, and west god. There's also a 5th secret one that nobody knows about. They're up in the sky. And then I do have one world that has way too many gods. I lost track of them.
Well, and again, like, I think that D&D makes a lot of sense to have all these deities in the same way that it's a super high magic world.
Yeah.
Like, I want to discover, or I either need to build one or I need to figure one out where the melee system is engaging and fun. And I already have some ideas for that, because like I'm like a what is it? I am a battle master fighter kind of, like, I love that stuff with maneuvers and with like that's fun to me, but it still doesn't feel quite right, and I think it has to do with HP being this like overarching, a meaning for exhaustion, a meaning for sickness, a meaning for luck. I mean, like it encompasses so many things. That I think that it makes melee fighters a bit like weirder, because like you can attack somebody and do nothing to them.
Yeah,
which is like wild. Which is not how fighting works at all.
Yeah, like AC as a concept being a very binary thing is just. D&D does a lot of things really cool.
Anyway.
It does combat really mid.
And again, like because it favors, it's a magical combat system.
Yes.
It's all about being this. Like that's what it's about, and that's what it does well. Is it does magical combat well.
Yeah.
It like being a freaking abjuration wizard's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like like that's a lot of fun. There's a lot to pay attention to. There's a lot like you're involved like with every step of the process. You can or even I just think the being classes where you can interact on other people's turns, I think is really fun. Like that's a really great system. Anyway, I could talk about systems all day. But what did you have a next question or like I got?
I did.
No, it's fine. I love talking about games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to remember what it was now. Must have not been important. I am curious if you have a preferred god. I can certainly think of a deity-like character who is my favorite divine figure that I have made, and I'm curious if you've got one as well.
Mine is the agent, is the astral agent. I think that the reason I like them so much is I'm a big I love the Dishonored franchise. And in the Dishonored franchise, there's this character called the Outsider, right? And it was just this like dude who became this very powerful, like world-changing figure. And so this idea that like people worship this person, but they don't really care that people worship them. People like make shrines. People use this ability or these abilities in very different ways. Is very cool. So like that, the agent in particular is so interesting to me that like they just like they are thrust into this position of immense power and they don't quite know what to do with it. So they just kind of do whatever it is in the moment. And they just kind of give that power to different people for like off of their whims, you know, like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. That entertains
we'll rock
me.
with that.
Yeah, like that little like ceremony you just did was pretty all right. Like here's some of this, you know, like go cause some chaos.
Yeah.
Go make the world entertaining. And so like that type of like very like Fey kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
Where it's very much on the whims, and they don't quite know how to get out of their current position or out of their current space. So that's just kind of what they do. So that would be my go-to in like that concept of gods giving away power because it's interesting and it makes for an interesting show. I think is just so compelling.
Gods being bored is the like preface to so many good concepts and like so many good stories. And even better if it's like a massively consequential thing. Imagine if that, I mean, I don't know what the plot of your 6-year campaign was, but imagine if at the end of the 6-year campaign, the entire genesis of whatever the primary strife was, this god was bored. They forgot that they did this thing.
You put us through all that?
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
It's like, oh, I was asleep. I forgot that I left the oven on, but oops. Like, yeah, like gods being silly.
Yeah. Yeah, listen to West info dump about a 6-year home game. Okay, absolutely do not get me started. I will never shut up.
We'll do that next time.
And it's so funny because like I understand that like when I talk about these things that they sound like I'm recounting a dream. Like I get it. Like I know like nobody cares, but like I just love how much we care about it. I love how much it impacts us.
Yes, it's a very personal thing. It makes it so much better. It's like an inside joke, but heartfelt.
Yeah, like so I empathize in a way that like I love it when people tell me their stories, but if it goes on for too long, it is again, you're just telling me about this dream that you
yeah
like you don't need to tell me the whole plot of the movie. Exactly. I get it, like I understand. But it's still very fun to see how much people like care. Like that is the coolest thing because I know you care, Emmy. I also care because I care about people and I care about cool stories. And yeah. So it's a beautiful thing that we get to create our own stories that are our own personal Lord of the Rings, and that are our own personal, like, Aragorn. And I hope that, like, if you get anything out of the stream, it's that, like, this hobby is just a phenomenal way to create and to play, and to create memories for yourself that will play back as memories when you're older. You'll remember the
Unapologetically.
great adventures. Yeah, you'll remember the great adventures that you went on with these folks. It's very cool.
And to what Shay said about at the end of a super long home campaign, the PCs become the pantheon. Like,
Yeah, no joke.
yeah, always good. And
Absolutely.
it's so it's a little cap at the end, right? A little end cap to just be like, now those characters that we had so much fun with, that we're all about to say goodbye to, they're still out there. Like, they're still out there. They are the gods now. That world is still living and breathing and is being overseen by these people that we put ourselves into. And, like, who's to say that's not happening, right? Who's to say that they're not out there somewhere being gods, having a good time, doing whatever, carrying on, etc. What is the end
Right.
goal if not to become unto a god? I mean, sometimes the end goal is to kill a god. You know, that's
If it has HP, you can kill it, right? That's the whole.
that's I read that in a
That's the
book.
saying.
I asked my doctor that, and they said that's true.
I want that on a shirt. Yeah, I want that on a shirt. for
If it
sure.
has
I have
HP,
not
it
seen
can
that
be
shirt
killed.
yet. Yeah, I have not seen that shirt yet. That one needs to be made.
You got to get like a shirt that says, like, if you have HP, if it has HP, it can be killed, and like somewhere like lower on the shirt, really tiny, just say I don't have HP.
Yeah.
Or infinite HP or something like that. I think my favorite godlike character that I've had, they weren't actually a god, but they were essentially one. They were affecting reality in the same way as a god, and it was more or less a wizard who went insane trying to prevent his own downfall into insanity, which was the cause of his downfall into insanity. And he essentially is now stuck in a, like, dimensional time loop where he is constantly trying to discover a reality where he can prevent the thing that happened that caused him to lose it, and fails repeatedly and causes that version of himself to go do the same thing, and it's like a domino effect. And so this single dude is, like, tearing through every reality, destroying it, because he cannot help himself, and he cannot deal with the fact that he's destroyed his own reality. I gotta go find a new one and not destroy that one. Oh, damn it, I destroyed this one too. And so he's just on loop forever, destroying dimensions. And if it wasn't for, like, if it wasn't for the fact that he has other, like, peers, basically, who are aware of what's going on and have then started to reach out across dimensions to contact themselves in other realities to be like, hey, watch out, this thing's coming. It would have just been a constant wrecking ball. And so, you know, that let me have, like, you know, how far away is this threat? How many dimensions away, essentially, is this threat? And also let me more or less play with, like, resetting the world, where it's like, okay, well, now we're just in a different dimension. This one hasn't been destroyed yet. But it's going to get destroyed eventually, and so there's always that looming threat. So I more or less just built him to have a... Yeah, exactly.
Your planet.
Except it's not even like he's not even doing it out of, like, I hate this, or like I want to destroy the world. It's literally just like, I am trying to prevent myself from making the mistake that causes myself to make the mistake that causes myself to make the mistake.
Sounds like Doctor Strange.
Basically.
In What If?
I'm a wreck when it comes to, I'm always putting in time loops and cross dimensions crap.
Good on ya. I don't dare screw around with that kind of stuff. That gets all sorts of messy.
I love a good time loop arc where the players get trapped in some essentially one shot as a part of a campaign, and they can't move on until they solve the puzzle or whatever. Always good.
That's great.
We find ourselves at time, though, which is a damn shame.
We made it.
We made it. We made it all the way to the end. We're in one piece. Well, two pieces. We're not a singular entity yet.
That is true.
We have yet to converge.
Eventually, we will merge.
Gen
Once our
Con.
power levels are the same, and we do a little dance.
Yeah.
I think that's how that works.
And the dance has to end with a oh wait. There we go. We got it. Other way.
Oh, I go this way?
There it is. Okay, got it. Hey! All right, someone screenshot that. Perfect. Thank you so much for hanging out tonight, Wes. Thank you so much for being here on this stream. Is there anything that you would like to shout out to the world, stuff that you've got going on, things for folks to check out, where they can find you, etc.?
Absolutely. You can find me everywhere on the internet as Arcane Anthems. I write free TTRPG music for your campaigns. I write TTRPG music that's kind of like pop music that you can just like listen to like a normal person, and you'll only know, your friends will only know that it's nerdy stuff if they listen really carefully. Yeah, I'm doing a couple different panels at Gen Con coming up here. I'll be doing a panel at San Diego Comic-Con as well. But if you want to support me, you can buy a ticket to our panel at Gen Con. It's TTRPG musicians, or TTRPG music, professional nerd musicians Q&A. It's like $10, and you can come hang out with me and Will Savino and Denkels and Ginny D and Emmeline Sterling. And we can all have a good time, and it's hilarious. They're just some of the most fun.
I'm gonna have to get myself a ticket.
Yeah, get it. Get them while they're hot, because there's only like 20 left. Or something
damn!
Like that. So
all right,
yeah.
everybody, go get tickets.
Yeah, go get tickets. And yes, if you see me around town or around the world, please say hello. That's why I go outside, is to say hi to people. So I don't get to say hi to people all the time, especially not in person. So yeah, that's me. That's Arcane Anthems.
Well, thank you again. It's been absolutely a pleasure to chat with you tonight. And thank you to everybody in chat for hanging out with us this evening. And for those who I'm seeing stuff about missing the first half, of course, the VOD is going to be up right after this, either on Twitch or on the YouTube Endeavorance channel. So you'll be able to check this out and extract wisdom for years to come. Anyway.
Years? Whoa, hold on.
Decades,
whoa.
even.
Maybe like hours.
Everything.
Maybe hours.
Look, this is the internet. It's permanent. We're never going away. What's the phrase? Ashes to we're still here. Dust to we're still here. Like everything is permanent. So.
Oh, I was just gonna say till the what is it, the fuel death of the sun or whatever it is.
The heat death of the universe.
Heat death of the universe. Yeah. That's even further though. So.
Did you know the heat death of the universe is not talking about things getting too hot? It's actually the
they're getting
removal of heat. Yes, the death of heat, not the heat causing death.
Further and further away.
It's really, really upsetting, actually.
Heat is life. Yeah, heat is life. So
thanks everybody for hanging out on this stream. Don't contemplate the heat death of the universe too much.
No. You won't see it. Don't even worry about it.
Everything's great.
Just contemplate your impending demise. It's much sooner. So there's that.
A really, really great sign off here today. Wonderful. All right. Okay. Take care, everyone. Be well. I will be back on Friday. Wes will cease to exist the second that this stream is over, because he exists only as pixels on your screen in this moment. Take care. Be well. We will see you soon. Thank you for hanging out. Bye-bye.